He tore up my resume in my face, but when he read it, he almost fainted. Emily Johnson took a deep breath before pushing open the glass door of the reception area. Her hands were sweaty as she clutched the folder with her documents, feeling her heart pound harder with each step toward the elevator of the most prestigious construction company in New York City. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, she was met with an elegant space where well-dressed employees hurried about. The receptionist, a middle-aged blonde woman, looked her up and down before asking the purpose of her visit. "I'm here for the job interview for the administrative assistant position," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman checked a schedule and pointed to a brown leather chair. "Wait there. Mr. Robert will see you in a few minutes." Emily sat and observed the movement around her. Everyone seemed so confident, so well established. She adjusted her beige blouse, which she had ironed 3 times the night before, and smoothed her black skirt, her only formal piece. 20 minutes later, a tall man in a dark suit emerged from a room at the end of the hallway. His brown hair had streaks of grey at the sides, and he walked with the posture of someone used to giving orders. "Emily Johnson?" he asked, glancing at a paper in his hands. "Yes, sir." "Come into my office." Robert Wilson's office was spacious, with a solid wood desk and shelves filled with books on architecture and engineering. Through the window, the entire stretch of Fifth Avenue was visible against the horizon. "Sit down," he said curtly, without looking up from the documents. "I see here you have no prior experience in corporate settings." "It's my first opportunity, sir, but I've studied hard and—" "Studied where?" he interrupted. "I took a technical course in administration at night. I worked during the day to pay for it." Robert finally looked her in the eyes. There was something cold in his gaze, a distance that made Emily feel small. "Listen carefully, girl. This company handles projects worth millions of dollars. I can't afford to train someone from scratch. I need people with real experience, not dreamers who think a technical course is enough." The words hit Emily like slaps. She had worked so hard to get here. "But you didn't even look at my resume properly." "I don't need to." Robert grabbed the papers from the desk and without warning began tearing them up in front of her. "I don't hire people without experience. It's a waste of time." Emily felt tears burning her eyes as she watched her efforts being shredded piece by piece. Some employees passing by the hallway stopped to watch the scene. "You have no right to—" "I have every right. This is my company." The torn pieces of the resume fell to the floor like bitter confetti. Emily bent down to pick them up, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Her hands trembled as she gathered the fragments of paper. Then, one of the pieces slid and stopped near Robert's shoes. He automatically bent to pick it up, and his eyes landed on the torn header, where the words were still clearly legible. "Emily Grace Johnson." The paper shook in his hands. The name Grace struck him like lightning, draining all color from his face. His eyes widened, and he staggered back, bracing himself against the desk. "What's wrong?" Emily asked, noticing the sudden change in his expression. Robert couldn't speak. The name Grace Johnson echoed in his mind like a ghost from the past. 28 years. It had been exactly 28 years since he left Grace, promising to return and never showing up again. Your full name," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "Emily Grace Johnson." "Why?" Robert's legs felt like they had turned to jelly. He slumped into the chair, studying the young woman's face with new eyes. The dark, curly hair, the shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head when asking a question. It was like seeing Grace at 20 again. "Your mother, what's her name?" Emily hesitated. Why would a stranger care about her mother? "Grace Johnson. But I don't understand why that matters." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert ran a hand over his face, trying to process the reality he'd just uncovered. The daughter Grace had been expecting when he left her was standing right in front of him after all these years. "Sir, are you all right?" Robert forced himself to compose, though his hands still trembled. Can we speak privately? In my reserved office?" "I thought you said you wouldn't hire me." "I changed my mind. Maybe I was too hasty." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. Emily followed him to a smaller room, where Robert closed the door and gestured to a more comfortable armchair. Please, have a seat. You still haven't told me why my full name affected you like that. Robert began pacing like a caged animal. How could he explain without ruining her life? How could he tell her he was the father she'd never known? Your mother, where does she work? She's a cleaner downtown. She's always worked hard to raise me. Why these questions? With every word, Robert's chest tightened. Grace, the woman he'd once loved deeply, had spent all these years scrubbing offices to support the daughter he'd abandoned. And your father. Emily looked down, a gesture Robert recognized instantly. It was exactly what Grace did when she felt vulnerable. I don't know who he is. My mother never wanted to talk about him, said it was better that way. You never tried to find out? Of course I did, but every time I asked, she'd get sad and change the subject. Eventually, I stopped pushing. Robert sat behind the desk, studying every detail of Emily's face. Now that he knew who she was, the resemblance was obvious, not just to Grace, but to himself too. The shape of her eyebrows, the line of her jaw. Listen, Emily, I want to offer you the job. What? 5 minutes ago, you said I wasn't cut out for this place. People can change their minds. Based on what? My name? That makes no sense. Robert found himself at a crossroads. Telling the truth would open a Pandora's box that could destroy lives. But lying meant starting a professional relationship built on deceit. Maybe I judged you too quickly. I came from a humble family too. I know how hard it is to get that first break. Emily studied him warily. There was something off about his sudden change of heart. And what would my salary be? $3,000 to start, with a possible raise in 3 months. Emily's eyes widened. It was more than she made from her 3 part-time jobs combined. That's very generous for someone with no experience. Everyone deserves a chance. Something in his voice sounded forced, like he was reciting a rehearsed line. Emily had learned to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. I need to think about it. Think? Why? Because something's not right. First, you humiliate me in front of everyone, then offer me an above-average salary. Either it's pity, or you're hiding something. Robert realized he'd underestimated the young woman's intelligence. Grace had always been sharp too. It's not pity, it's just... The door swung open abruptly, and an elegant woman in her 50s walked in without knocking. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she wore a navy blue dress that cost more than Emily made in 6 months. Robert, I need to speak with you now, she said, then noticed Emily's presence. Who is this girl? Catherine, this is Emily Johnson, our new employee. Catherine Wilson looked Emily up and down with the critical gaze of someone accustomed to judging people by appearances. New employee? Since when do you hire staff without consulting me? Since always. I'm the one who runs the company. And since when do you hire unqualified girls? Emily felt her blood boil. First Robert, now this woman. You don't even know me to say I'm unqualified. Catherine smiled condescendingly. Sweetheart, just look at you. Cheap clothes, insecure posture. Who would hire someone like that? Catherine, that's enough. Robert stood up. Enough? Robert, this company has standards. We can't just hire anyone who walks in. Emily stood up too, dignity outweighing her need for the job. You know what? I don't want to work somewhere I'm judged by the clothes I wear. Thank you for the offer, mister. Robert, but I decline. She headed for the door, but Catherine's voice stopped her. Good, at least the girl has some sense. Catherine! Robert shouted, raising his voice to his wife for the first time in years. What? I'm telling the truth. Look at her, Robert. What kind of client would want to be served by someone like that? Emily turned slowly, tears of anger glistening in her eyes. You're right. I don't have expensive clothes or jewelry, but I have something money can't buy. Character, something you clearly lack. The silence that followed was sharp. Catherine turned pale, unaccustomed to being challenged. How dare you? You're the one who doesn't dare. You don't dare to see value beyond appearances. You don't dare to give a chance to those who truly need it. You live in a bubble of privilege and judge those who didn't have the same opportunities. Robert watched the scene with a mix of pride and terror. Emily had the same grit as Grace, the same courage to stand up to injustice. "Enough!" Catherine yelled. "Robert, either you fire this girl immediately or what?" Robert interrupted. "Or you'll regret it." The veiled threat hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Emily looked from one to the other, realizing she'd stumbled into something much bigger than a simple job interview. "I'll leave," she said calmly. "But first, I want you to know I got here on my own. I've worked since I was 14 to help my mother. I studied at night after long work days. I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I come from. The shame should be yours. You have everything, and yet are so petty." She left the room, leaving Robert and Catherine in silence. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway as all the employees watched, some with curiosity, others with pity. In the elevator, Emily finally let the tears fall. Another door closed, another humiliation. But something bothered her beyond the rejection. Robert's reaction to seeing her full name had been strange. When she reached the lobby, she remembered she'd left her purse in the meeting room. Reluctantly, she went back, hoping the couple's argument had ended. The door was slightly ajar, and she overheard their conversation. "Robert, since when do you care so much about an employee?" Catherine asked. "I just think it was too unfair." "Unfair? You tore up her resume in front of everyone and then offered her the job. What kind of behavior is that?" "I changed my mind. Because of her name." There was a long pause. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. Grace Johnson." "Do you think I forgot?" Emily felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Grace Johnson. Her mother. "Catherine, don't give me that. I always knew you still thought about her, but I never imagined you'd have the nerve to bring her daughter here to work." "How do you know she's Grace's daughter?" "By the look on your face when you read her name. By her age, by the resemblance. I'm not stupid, Robert." Emily leaned against the wall, dizzy. That man knew her mother, knew her well enough for his wife to still be jealous after all these years. "Grace never told me she was pregnant," Robert murmured, "because she knew you'd never leave my family. She knew you'd chosen the money." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that. You dated a cleaning woman, but when my father offered you a partnership in the company in exchange for marriage, you didn't think twice. I loved you too. Liar, you grew to love me. At first, it was just convenience, and she knew that." Emily couldn't listen anymore. She ran out of the building, leaving her purse behind. The puzzle pieces were falling into place painfully. Her mother had been abandoned while pregnant. Robert Wilson was her father. The man who had humiliated her that morning was the father she'd always wanted to know. She wandered the streets of New York City aimlessly, trying to process the revelation. Catherine's words echoed in her mind. You'd chosen the money. When she got home to the small two-room apartment in the Bronx, Grace was preparing lunch. She was a 46-year-old woman who looked much older from years of hard work. Her curly hair, just like her daughter's, was tied in a simple ponytail. "How was the interview, sweetheart?" Emily looked at her with new eyes. She tried to picture her at 20 when she'd met Robert. She must have been beautiful with those expressive eyes and warm smile. "Mom, I need to ask you something." "Of course, go ahead." "Do you know someone named Robert Wilson?" Grace dropped the spoon into the pot. Her hands began to shake and she leaned against the counter. Why are you asking that?" "He was the one who interviewed me today." The silence that followed carried 28 years of unspoken secrets. Grace slowly turned to her daughter, her face pale. "Did he say anything?" "Not directly, but I overheard a conversation between him and his wife. Mom, he's my father, isn't he?" Grace collapsed into a chair, as if her legs could no longer hold her. "I never wanted you to find out like this." "So it's true." Tears began to stream down Grace's face. "It's true." Emily sat beside her mother, taking her hands. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to suffer the rejection I did. But I had the right to know." "You did, and I was too much of a coward to tell you." "Tell me now." Tell me everything." Grace took a deep breath, preparing to reopen wounds she'd spent years trying to heal. "I worked as a cleaner at Catherine's father's company. Robert had just been hired as an engineer. He was different from the others, always greeted me, asked how I was. And you fell in love." "I fell in love. I thought he did too. We were together for almost 2 years. He said he'd talk to the bosses about us, that we'd make our relationship public. But he never did. I found out I was pregnant and told him." Robert panicked. That same week, Catherine's father offered him a partnership in exchange for marrying her. And he accepted. He said he needed time to think, that he'd find a way to stay with me. But I knew I was losing him. Grace stood and went to the bedroom, returning with a dusty shoebox. He wrote letters. Letters. So many letters. For years. Grace opened the box, revealing dozens of envelopes yellowed with time. "You kept them?" "All of them. Even knowing he'd chosen money over me, I kept every one." Emily picked up one of the letters with trembling hands. The handwriting was firm, masculine. "Grace, I can't stop thinking about you. The marriage was a mistake, but now I can't turn back. Her family threatened me. They said if I didn't stay away from you, they'd make sure no company would hire me. I had no choice." "Did he try to come back?" "For years, but I never answered. I was too hurt." Emily kept reading. "I dream every night about the baby that must have been born. Is it a boy or a girl? Does it look like me or you? Please, at least tell me how you are." "Mom, you could have answered." "And then what? Was he going to leave his wealthy wife for a pregnant cleaning lady? I had too much pride to accept scraps." "But I had the right to know him." "You did, and I stole that right from you. I'm sorry." Emily hugged her mother, feeling the weight of years of silence between them. "What do we do now?" "I don't know. Do you want to meet him?" "He humiliated me this morning. He tore up my resume in front of everyone. He didn't know who you were. And that makes it okay?" "No, but maybe it explains it." Emily spent the rest of the day reading the letters. Some were romantic, others desperate. Many asked about her, if she was okay, if she needed anything. "Grace, I know you must hate me, but our daughter isn't to blame for my mistakes. If you need money for anything, leave a sign at the post office on Main Street. Just give me a chance to help." He offered help? Many times, but I worked 3 jobs before taking anything from him. 3 jobs to support us when you could have had help. It was a matter of principle. It was pride. Grace didn't deny it. Maybe. The next day, Emily decided to return to the company to get her purse. She arrived early, hoping to avoid Robert, but he was waiting in the lobby. "Emily, I'm glad you came. I'm just here for my purse. It's in my office. Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about." "There is, and you know it." They went up in silence. In the office, Robert had placed her purse on the desk, along with the torn pieces of her resume. "I taped it back together," he said, "as an apology." Emily looked at the resume patched with tape. It was a perfect metaphor for their situation. "You read the letters." It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Your eyes. They're just like your mother's when she's emotional. Don't compare me to her." "Why not?" "Because she's too good for you." Robert felt the sting but knew he deserved it. "She is. She always was." "Then why did you leave her?" "Because I was young and scared. Because I thought money and social status mattered more than love." "Did they?" "No. Never." Emily sat down, studying the man who was her father. He looked older than 49, as if carrying the weight of years of regret. "Why didn't you fight for her?" "Because Catherine's family had the power to ruin me, and I didn't want to risk it. You chose to ruin our family instead." "I didn't know there was a family to ruin. Grace never told me she was pregnant." "Do you know why?" "Now I do. Because she knew me better than I knew myself. She knew I'd take the easy way out. And you did." "I did. And I've regretted it every day since." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot for those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily stayed silent for a few minutes, absorbing the conversation. What do you want from me now? A chance. To know you. To be part of your life in some way. Why? Feeling guilty? Of course I am. But it's not just that. When I saw you yesterday, I saw the grace I lost. I saw the daughter I never got to know. I saw the family I chose not to have. And Catherine, does she know we're talking? No. And for now, it's better that way. Are you still afraid of her? Robert hesitated. I'm afraid of the consequences. This company is my life. More important than your daughter? No. Definitely not. Then prove it. How? Give me the job. Not out of pity, not out of guilt. On merit. But you said you didn't want to work here. I changed my mind. I want to show you and your wife that I'm capable. Robert smiled for the first time since he'd met her. You're just like your mother, stubborn and proud. And you'll find out that's not necessarily a bad thing. Emily started work the following Monday. Catherine wasn't happy at all, but Robert stood firm in his decision for the first time in years. The first few days were tough. The other employees treated her with suspicion, assuming she'd gotten the job through influence. Emily worked twice as hard to prove her worth. She arrived an hour early and left an hour late. She studied the company's processes at home, took online courses to qualify herself. Her dedication was impressive. Robert watched from afar, proud but unable to show it. Any sign of favoritism would be noticed by Catherine. A week after starting, Emily was given a complex task, organizing the documentation for a $50 million project. It was a disguise test. She spent 3 days sorting contracts, permits, and blueprints. She uncovered several irregularities that could have cost the company dearly. Mr. Robert, she entered his office with a thick folder. I found some issues in the Greenwich project. What kind of issues? Expired permits, contracts with conflicting clauses, and discrepancies in the budgets. Robert flipped through the documents she'd organized. It was meticulous, professional work. How did you find all this? I read every document 3 times, compared dates, figures, and clauses. I think someone tried to slip these irregularities past unnoticed. Someone? The lawyer in charge of the project, Dr. Thompson. Robert knew Dr. Thompson was a personal friend of Catherine's. He also knew the man wasn't very reliable, but Catherine always defended his hiring. Are you sure about these findings? Absolutely. I can show you every inconsistency. Robert studied the documents for an hour. Emily was right on every point. Her work had potentially saved the company from a multi-million-dollar loss. Good job, he said simply. Is that it? What else did you expect? Recognition? A promotion? Something that shows my work has value. You've only been here a week. And I just saved the company millions. Any other employee would have been praised publicly. Robert realized she was right. He'd been too cautious out of fear of Catherine. You're right. I'll call a meeting to discuss your findings. And will you give credit where it's due? I will. The meeting took place the next afternoon. All the managers were present, including Dr. Thompson. Catherine also attended. She rarely missed a chance to oversee her husband. Emily uncovered some irregularities in the Greenwich project, Robert began. Dr. Thompson paled but tried to keep his composure. What kind of irregularities? Emily stood and began presenting her findings. She spoke confidently, citing numbers and dates with precision. The evidence was undeniable. This is very detailed, Dr. Thompson stammered. How do you explain these inconsistencies? Robert asked. They must be typos. Typos that would have cost the company $10 million? Emily countered. The silence in the room was deafening. Catherine watched the scene with growing irritation. Dr. Thompson, Robert said formally, I'll need you to review all the documentation under your responsibility. Robert, Catherine interrupted, maybe we should discuss this in private. There's nothing to discuss in private. Emily did an excellent job and deserves recognition. Since when does a junior employee question senior attorneys? Catherine shot back. Since when is she right? Robert replied, surprising everyone with his firmness. After the meeting, Catherine stormed into Robert's office. What was that? Recognition for good work. You're making a fool of that girl. It's obvious you have a special interest in her. I have an interest in competent employees. Employees or daughters? The silence confirmed what Catherine already knew. I've known you for over 20 years, Robert. I can tell when you're lying. I'm not lying about her work. It's exceptional. And about her being your daughter. Robert took a deep breath. It was time to stop running. She is my daughter. I knew. From the very first day. And why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how far your guilt would take you. It's not guilt. It's paternal love. Love you discovered a week ago? Love I denied for 28 years, but it was always there. Catherine walked to the window, watching the city below. And now, will you publicly acknowledge her as your daughter? If I have to. Do you know what this means for our reputation, for our marriage? Do you know what it means to pretend she doesn't exist, for my conscience? Your conscience should have thought of that before you betrayed me. I never betrayed you during our marriage. Not physically, but mentally, you were always with her, with Grace. Robert couldn't deny it. Grace had always held a special place in his thoughts. What do you want me to do? Fire my own daughter? I want you to stop favoring her. I'm not favoring her. I'm being fair. Fair would have been not hiring her in the first place. Why? Because she's the daughter of a cleaning lady. Because she's the daughter of your mistress. Grace was never my mistress. She was my girlfriend, the woman I loved before I married you. And do you still love her? The question hung in the air like a sentence. Robert knew his answer would change everything. I've always loved her, but I chose you. You chose my money. At first, yes, but I learned to love you too. And now? Now I want to make things right. I want to know my daughter. I want to help Grace. At the cost of our marriage? If I have to. Catherine turned to him, tears of anger glistening in her eyes. You're willing to throw away 28 years of marriage for a fantasy from the past? I'm willing to do what I should have done 28 years ago. And if I don't accept it, then we'll have to talk about separation. The word landed between them like a bomb. For the first time, Robert had threatened to leave her. You don't have the courage. I didn't. Now I do. Catherine slammed the door on her way out. Robert stood alone, realizing he had crossed a line from which there was no return. Meanwhile, Emily worked on her new project, unaware of the argument she had caused. She was so engrossed in her work that she didn't even notice when all her colleagues had left. It was almost 8 in the evening when Robert appeared at her desk. Still here? I'm finishing the Williamsburg project report. You can leave it for tomorrow. I'd rather finish it today. Robert pulled up a chair and sat beside her. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you working so hard? Trying to prove something? Emily stopped typing and looked him in the eye. I want to prove I'm not an opportunist, that I deserve to be here regardless of who my father is. You've already proven that. To you, maybe. But everyone else thinks I only got the job as a favor. And does that bother you? Very much. I've always worked hard for everything I've achieved. I don't want people to think I've changed now. Robert felt a surge of pride. His daughter had character. You know what? When I was young, I also had to prove my worth. The difference is, you're doing it the right way, and you did it the wrong way. I took shortcuts, marriages of convenience, friendships for gain. You're building your reputation through honest work. It's still possible to change. You think so? I'm sure of it. It's never too late to make the right choices. Robert smiled. At 28, his daughter was wiser than he was at 49. Emily, can I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Do you hate me? For what I did to your mother? Emily thought carefully before answering. I don't hate you, but I'm disappointed. Why? Because you created expectations you couldn't fulfill. My mother truly loved you. You were her whole world. And I destroyed that. You did. but maybe some of the damage can still be repaired. How? By being the man she believed you were. Robert fell silent for several minutes, absorbing his daughter's words. What if it's too late? You won't know unless you try. That night, Robert returned home determined to have a serious talk with Catherine. She was in the living room, sipping wine and flipping through a magazine. We need to talk. About your daughter. About us. About our life. About what we want moving forward. Catherine set the magazine aside. Are you giving me an ultimatum? I'm trying to be honest, for the first time in years. And what is this honesty? That our marriage is built on lies, that I never got over Grace, that I have a daughter I want to know, and that you don't love me anymore. I do love you, Catherine, but not in the way you deserve. And what way is that? Completely, exclusively. You deserve to be the only woman in a man's life. And you can never give me that. Not while I know Grace is alone because of me. Not while my daughter needs me. Catherine stood up and poured another glass of wine. What if I agree to share you? It wouldn't work. You'd grow more resentful over time. And if I don't agree? Then we separate. Amicably, with respect for the years we've spent together. You want a divorce. I want our freedom, yours and mine. Catherine drank her wine in silence, processing the conversation. What about the company? You can keep your share. I'll start over from scratch if I have to. At 49? At 49. With my daughter by my side. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. Catherine nodded slowly. Fine. But on one condition. What? I want your daughter out of the company. Why? Because I can't work seeing her every day, seeing what I was never able to give you. It's not her fault. I know, but I also can't pretend everything's fine. Robert understood her point. I'll talk to Emily. The next morning, he called Emily for a private conversation. I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? Catherine and I are separating. She'll keep part of the company and I'll start my own construction firm. Because of me. Because of 28 years of lies. You were just the final straw. And what's the proposal? Do you want to be my partner? Emily sat down heavily. Partner? I've barely started working here. But you have talent and vision. We can start small and grow together. What if it fails? Then at least we tried together. How do I explain this to my mother? We'll explain it together, if she's willing to listen. Emily considered the offer. It was risky, but also a unique opportunity. I need a few conditions. Name them. First, I don't want anything handed to me. I'll work to earn my place. Agreed. Second, my mother needs to know everything. No secrets. I accept. Third, if you disappoint me again, I'm leaving and never speaking to you again. I accept, but I won't disappoint you. How can I be sure? Because this time, I have more to lose than to gain. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing, that afternoon Robert and Emily went to Grace's house. The small, simple apartment was a far cry from the luxury Robert was used to, but he felt more at home there than in his mansion. Grace opened the door and froze when she saw Robert. Hi, Mom, Emily said. I brought a visitor. Grace, Robert murmured, his voice choked. She was older now, with wrinkles around her eyes and streaks of grey in her hair, but she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Robert, after all these years, can I come in? Grace hesitated, but Emily encouraged her with a nod. Of course. The living room was small but cozy. Photos of Emily at various ages decorated the walls. Robert imagined himself present in all those moments. Would you like some coffee? Grace asked, trying to ease the tension. Please. While she prepared the coffee, Robert studied the house. Everything was clean and tidy, despite its simplicity. Love was evident in every detail. Emily told me about the two of you, Grace said, returning with the cups. What do you think? I think she's a lot like me, stubborn and distrustful. And you? Still distrustful? Grace studied him carefully. I have reasons to be. Every reason in the world. But Emily believes in you and she's smarter than I was at 20. You were always smart. I was the foolish one. You were young. I was a coward. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the years between them. Robert, Grace finally said, what do you want from us? A chance to fix my mistakes, to be the father I should have been, to maybe reclaim what I lost. And your wife. We're separating. Grace didn't seem surprised. Because of us? Because of the truth. Because we can't pretend anymore. What if I say I don't forgive you? You'd have every right, but I'll keep trying to earn your forgiveness. What if I say it's too late? I'll accept that, but I'll still try to be a good father to Emily. Grace looked at her daughter, who had been silently watching the conversation. Emily, what do you want? I want to know my father, and I want both of you to stop suffering over the past. It's not that simple. I know it's not. But we can try. Grace took a deep breath. All right, we can try. But slowly, Robert, one step at a time. I understand. And if you hurt me again, I won't. How can I be sure? Because now I know the value of what I lost, and I won't lose it again. The three of them spent the afternoon talking. Robert shared his years of regret. Grace spoke about the struggles of raising Emily alone, and Emily talked about her dreams and plans. When night fell, Robert prepared to leave. Can I come back tomorrow? You can, Grace replied. But as a friend, as Emily's father, we can't just go back to what we were. I know, and I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a fresh chance to get to know both of you. All right, a fresh chance. Robert smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. Grace? Yes? Thank you. For what? For raising an amazing daughter, for being strong when I was weak, for giving me this opportunity. Grace felt tears in her eyes. Just don't let me down again. I won't. In the months that followed, Robert began the process of divorcing Catherine. It was amicable, but painful. 28 years of marriage don't end easily. He rented a smaller apartment and started planning his new business with Emily. She showed an innovative vision for sustainable construction and social projects. I want our company to be different, she said, during one of the planning meetings. Different how? One that gives opportunities to people like me, that has trainee programs for young people from underprivileged communities. It'll be hard to compete with bigger companies, but we'll make a difference, and that's worth more than profit. Robert admired his daughter's passion. She reminded him of his own dreams before greed corrupted him. Emily, can I tell you something? Of course. When I was young, I had the same ideals as you. I wanted to use my profession to make the world better. What happened? I lost my way. I let money and status become more important. It's not too late to get back on the right path. At 49, age doesn't matter when you're doing what you believe in. Robert smiled. His daughter was his inspiration. The new company started small, just Robert, Emily, and 2 hired employees. The first project was renovating a school in an underprivileged community. We won't make much money from this, Robert remarked, but we'll gain something better, self-respect. The project was a success. The community got involved, parents helped with the work, and the children drew pictures to decorate the walls. It was everything Robert had forgotten about the satisfaction of a job well done. Gradually, other projects came, always with a focus on social impact and sustainability. The company grew organically, built on reputation and quality. Robert was also rebuilding his relationship with Grace. They met regularly, sometimes with Emily, sometimes alone. It was different from their youthful romance, more mature and intentional. You've changed, Grace said during a dinner. For the better. Definitely, you're more human, more genuine. Emily taught me to be who I should have been all along. She really is special. Takes after her mother. Grace smiled, a smile Robert hadn't seen in 28 years. Robert? Yes? I forgive you." The words hit Robert like an embrace. Tears streamed down his face. "Thank you. I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. For us." "Does that mean—" "It means we can try again. Slowly. Carefully. But we can try." Robert took Grace's hand, feeling the same electricity from decades ago. "I love you, I always have. I love you too, despite everything." 2 years later, the company had 15 employees and was recognized for its innovative projects. Robert and Grace had married in a simple ceremony, with Emily as the maid of honor. Emily, now 30, was the company's vice president and was developing an ambitious project, a fully sustainable housing complex for low-income families. "This will be our biggest challenge," she said during the investor presentation. "And our greatest achievement," Robert added. The project was approved and became a model for other cities. Emily was invited to speak at universities about social entrepreneurship and sustainability. Robert watched her with paternal pride during these talks. His daughter had become the woman he'd always dreamed of being, successful without losing her humanity. One evening, the three were having dinner at home when Emily made an announcement. "I have news." "Good or bad?" Grace asked. "Good. Really good." "I'm pregnant." Robert and Grace exchanged glances, then hugged Emily at the same time. "I'm going to be a grandfather," Robert murmured, emotional. "And I'm going to be a grandmother," Grace laughed, crying with joy. "And this time," Emily said, looking at her father, "you'll be there from day one." "I promise with all my heart." "No need to promise. I know you will." Robert nodded, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, from past mistakes to present blessings, from greed to generosity, from fear to love. 9 months later, when he held his granddaughter in his arms for the first time, Robert finally understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't in bank accounts or properties, but in family bonds, in genuine love, and in the ability to make a difference in people's lives. Little Grace, named after her grandmother, opened her eyes and looked straight at her grandfather. In that moment, Robert knew all the sacrifices, all the hardships, and all the tears had been worth it. His family, finally complete, was the greatest achievement of his life. The company continued to grow, always upholding its social values. Robert and Grace grew old together, watching their granddaughter grow and supporting Emily in new ventures. When Robert turned 60, Emily organized a special party. She invited all the company's employees, families helped by their social projects, and the community where it all began. During his speech, Robert looked at the crowd and saw smiling faces, people whose lives had been positively touched by his work. He saw Grace, still beautiful at 68, holding their 11-year-old granddaughter. He saw Emily, now a nationally respected businesswoman who had never lost her humility. 33 years ago, he began, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I chose money over love. I chose convenience over truth. I lost 28 years with the most important people in my life. The audience listened in silence. But life gave me a second chance, and I learned that it's never too late to make the right choices, that true love overcomes any obstacle. That family is the greatest treasure anyone can have. He looked directly at Emily. My daughter taught me that success isn't measured in money, but in lives changed. That true leadership is serving others. That humility is strength, not weakness. Robert turned to Grace. And my wife taught me that forgiveness is liberation, that true love withstands time and mistakes, that it's possible to start over, even after so long. Tears flowed freely down the faces of everyone present. So on my 60th birthday, my wish is simple. May all of you have the courage to make the right choices. May you never give up on true love. May you always believe in second chances. The party lasted late into the night, filled with music, dancing, and shared stories. It wasn't just a celebration of a birthday, but of a life rebuilt on true values. When everyone had left, Robert, Grace, and Emily stayed on the porch, gazing at the stars. Dad, Emily said, do you know the moment that changed everything? When? When you tore up my resume. What do you mean? If you hadn't done that, I never would have let it fall near you. You never would have seen my full name. We never would have found each other. Robert laughed, realizing the irony. So my greatest cruelty was actually my greatest luck. Life works that way, Grace remarked. Sometimes we have to go through darkness to find the light. And sometimes, Emily added, we have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. Robert embraced the two most important women in his life, feeling deep gratitude for all the twists and turns that had brought them there. The torn resume framed in his office remained a daily reminder that second chances exist, that true love always finds a way, and that it's never too late to make the right choices. 5 years later, when little Grace turned 16, she found the framed resume in her grandfather's office. "Grandpa, why did you keep this?" Robert, now 65 with completely grey hair, smiled. "To remember the day that changed our lives, including how you almost lost Mom forever." "Exactly. To remind us that pride and fear can make us lose the people we love, but humility and courage can bring us back home." Young Grace, with the intelligence inherited from her family, understood the depth of the lesson. "And now you're home?" Robert looked out the window, watching Emily explain a project to new employees, Grace tending to the flowers in the company garden, and felt the peace that comes from a life well lived. "Now I'm home. Finally home." The end. Now tell me what you thought of this story of overcoming and forgiveness. Do you believe Robert made the right choice by choosing family? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're following from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.